That'd be fair to him.
Oh man, I got to hear you. Well, one person can see it over
Okay, so this is where we're at. Yep. Okay, when you're done with the public comment portion of it, I'm going to make a quick little... Sometimes they need reminders. And that is... Miranda, would you be willing to be part of the photographs?
What?
The Galt Gators. I want to get a picture with the whole team of the city council.
Oh, yeah.
Barbara?
Yep.
I'm going to make a presentation for the Gators. I'm going to tell us about their tips. I might there's a couple of have to come up here and you and I and Mary and I will get a picture with them. Okay.
It's actually doable now.
Yeah, well, you got...
I was sitting out of my car because they warned.
Well, your decision? Still thinking about it. Oh, yeah? And? Chase good people. Did he tell you? Did he tell you about the incident? With literally about a week after he took over again, his position about the guy with the swastika. And it was like within 2 blocks of the school. Oh, he stepped on it good. I was very proud of him.
Hey, John, give you a heads up. I talked to Tony, and he said he will take the lead if he used, reaffirm that they want to do it. He said he'll take the lead. It's right up his alley.
Oh.
It's the sports, everything.
So much for being sure.
Step up, really.
Okay. Fine. 1 minute out.
My daughter. It's like, they go away and then you get used to the players and then you come back and it's like you got another adult in your house.
Well, there's a man that may come back next meeting that's really interested in working with the youth, and he's interested in the youth commission, and even if he's not a mentor, an official mentor, sounds like he could work in the theater to fill in the gap. So, and you contact Armando, and then Armando.
It's not memorized?
Okay.
Thank you, sir. All right, we call this meeting of the Galt City Council to order. Mr. Rudolph, your report from closed session.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The City Council is in closed session this evening on public employee appointment, city manager and city attorney. There's no action to report.
Thank you, sir. With that, we will close out the closed session and begin the regular meeting. Starting off with, roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Payne, present. Councilmember Hewer. Here. Councilmember Campion. Councilmember Powers. Here. Mayor Cruz.
Present. And just for reference, Councilmember Campion took ill during our closed session, and that's the reason why he's not here this evening. Okay, would everybody rise, please, for silent prayer? Please follow me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we get the video statement, please?
This meeting of the Galt City Council will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the Local Government Affairs Channel on Comcast Consolidated Communications, and AT&T Uverse. The meeting is also webcast at www.faxmetrocable.tv. Tonight's meeting will air this Friday and Saturday at 9 a.m. This meeting is also closed captioned. A DVD copy is available for checkout from any library branch.
Thank you. Agenda approval, additions and or deletions?
None.
None? All right, with that, we'll move on. New employee introduction, Finance Department.
Yes, if Candelario can just come up to the podium. So I am pleased to introduce to the community Candelario Lopez Rodriguez. And he started with the City of Galt Finance Department in February of 2013, so just about over 2 years ago. And in May, he was actually promoted to a part-time position, and he is now assisting us with the meter implementation. So he is a great asset to the department. He is bilingual in Spanish. He is a very well-liked member of staff. He's a very quick study, and we've had some very positive feedback from the community, from some of his contacts over the counter. So that's where you see him primarily, is taking like our utility payments. So he is definitely our contact for the finance department. So we welcome Candelario.
Thank you, Inez.
Welcome.
Welcome. This is your chance. You have anything you want to say?
I just want to thank Inez and Michelle and everybody in the finance department. Thank you. I look forward to being here for a very long time.
Welcome again. All right, moving on to the second presentation, something near and dear to my heart, Galt Gators Swim Team, 2015 Motherlode Conference Champions. Come on, guys. Come on up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. These are 4 of my 7 coaches. I have head coach Lily Pilligard, Allie Duffy, Andres Ramos, and Chase Harvey. So not this past weekend, but the weekend before, we had our Motherlode Championships in Woodland, and we won. This is actually our 2nd year of winning for championships, and then this is our 1st year in recent years for winning the dual meet season. We finished the season 7-0. We had 7 meets, 5 of them conference and 2 of them non-conference.
You forgot they were undefeated for the season.
7-0, undefeated. Most of our meets we won by, the smallest margin was about 100 points. The largest margin was actually championships, and that was 505.5 points that we won by. So, thank you. Good job, guys.
Awesome.
I guess you need to stay. Mayor
Yes.
Cruz would like to do something.
Come down there to that level. I'd like the council to join me. Okay, also, the City Council would like to present a certificate of achievement and recognition to the team and its coaches for the hard work and dedication of the Galt Gators to become the 2015 Muddleload Conference champions. And we wish the team to continue success in the future.
Good job, guys.
That's something, that's something.
All right, moving on to our next presentation is obtaining a building permit, the Community Development Department. Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. John James, our new building official, will go ahead and give the presentation.
Good evening. Yeah, so I have a brief PowerPoint presentation on over-the-counter building permits. It's over-the-counter, meaning they're relatively easy. They're not as complicated as maybe building a Walmart or building a Gutridge home, where we have to do the plan submittal and, you know, maybe jump through a few more hoops with planning and public works. So this is for over-the-counter building permits. And if you could, let's see, I do this. Sorry about that. I haven't worked this yet. So basically, this is out of the California Building Code. It tells you when permits are required, and it's if you touch something that was originally approved by the jurisdiction, then you're more than likely going to need to get a building permit for us to look at it, make sure you put it back together right in case you go to sell it and somebody else is going to either adopt a problem or hopefully adopt something that's well and working and going to serve the house or the property for a long time coming. Instead of going through a list of what requires permits, I picked the bullet points to show you what doesn't require a permit, because the list of what does require a permit, we could be here for far longer than what you want to hear about. So if you just look through the list, if you build up like a playhouse or a shed that's under 120 square feet, then that doesn't require a permit. Fence is not over 7 feet. And then on a private residence, if you're doing like a path or a sidewalk, that's not requiring a permit. But if it's an accessible route, say like in a apartment building or a sidewalk out in front of a shopping center, then that does, because we have to make sure that all four wheels on a wheelchair are going to touch and there's not trip hazards and such for people with disabilities. Prefabricated swimming pools, so if you go to Big Lots, pick up one of those pools with a plug-in motor on it, that's not going to require a permit unless it's deeper than 24 inches or 5,000 gallons. And then HVAC, if you're burning up during summer and something goes bad and a guy comes to repair it without replacing it, then that doesn't require a permit either. Just keeping you up and running, maintaining your property, that's not something that requires permits. Then the last one is kind of silly, but portable heating appliances, it's pretty obvious. And if you guys have any questions as I'm going, just go ahead and jump in here.
I'm going to jump in here.
Yeah.
If someone, though, replaces their heating air unit, like a compressor or condenser, does that require a permit and a building license?
Yeah, that's an over-the-counter permit. You can do it as an owner-builder for your own property, but when you're dealing with compressors and refrigeration like that, it's usually the mechanical contractors that do that. But anytime you're the best way to look at that is like if you're messing with the electrical or something that has refrigerant that could actually hurt somebody, then that's when the permits get triggered. So if you were to stick one in your window with a little plug on it, that doesn't require a permit, but that'll probably require Rusty to come by and say, hey, get that out of that window, because now if you have a fire, you can't jump out. So, but as far as mechanical, yeah, that's probably one of our most common over-the-counter permits.
If we have a contractor coming in from out of town, do they have to get, do you know, or Inez, do they have to get a city license to change out equipment like that?
No, we don't require a business license, but we do, they are licensed through the contracting board, so we make sure that they're licensed for that. And then there is a fee collected, I believe, by TIF that does serve as a part of the business license.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then the list goes on, but basically if you have plumbing problems, maybe everyone's probably dealt with taking apart a P-trap because a piece of jewelry fell down. That doesn't require a permit, but if you end up having to tear across all the pipes underneath the house, then obviously that would require a permit. Clearing stoppages, again, if you see the rotor-rooter truck out in front of your neighbor's house, that doesn't require a permit unless they find out that it's busted and broken, and then it involves me, and then sometimes it'll involve Steve, depending on where the clog or the break is in the pipe. Shade cloth structures for nurseries and ag don't require a permit, but if you see the shade sales, that requires a permit, and that's just an over-the-counter permit, but planning will check setbacks on that, and then fire also checks for flame spread, like out to the market in places where the public is. There's actually a fire marshal tag in there to make sure it won't catch on fire and drip a bunch of hot plastic on you. Swings and other playground equipment, that doesn't require a permit, but I sure hope they're building their swings right. And then window awnings just on your houses or your garages. So the R3 is a single family house, and then a U is a garage. So those are the ones that you could put on a little, like basically the window dressings, as long as they project more than 54 inches, and that doesn't require a permit or engineering. The theory there is it's not big enough to fly off and hurt somebody. And then this is a list of the most common over-the-counter permits. So the water heaters, HVAC, and then stucco is really popular here because siding starts to rot, so they get an over-the-counter permit. We go out 3 times on that. We go out to make sure they removed all the rot, then we make sure they papered it right, that's the waterproofing, and then we make sure that the stucco process is done correctly. So everything from curing to the thickness of it. Window change out, kitchen remodels, bathroom remodels, and then you got your SMUD reconnections, which after the 2008 deal happened, we had all the vacant houses. After a while, SMUD will remove the meter for safety reasons, so we have to go out, verify that nobody went in the panel and messed with everything before they'll return on the smart meter, basically. And then the lateral repairs is pretty common, like over on Oak and areas like that. The older pipes are starting to fail. And so basically, this is the kind of how it goes for if you're getting an over-the-counter permit, you submit an application, we make sure you're either the property owner, so you could do that work, or you're a licensed contractor. Then we have a computer system that tracks what address they pulled the permit for, and then we also input when they pass the inspections or when they fail the inspections, and then we collect all the paperwork to go with it, like energy forms and other items like that. We issue them a permit, they get a permit card, that goes out in the field, and then inspections, and then these next few slides just kind of give you an overview of what those look like. So that's just the application there. That's pretty much what they usually look like. I know you guys are probably scratching your head on why would you pick that one, but we get all sorts of handwriting, and just getting them filled out right is just kind of the application part, but this just goes to show how the computer system works pretty well. So that's our application. Then we jump online and we make sure that they're licensed for the work and that they have work comp. And then after that, we put it in this software here. It's called Track It. And basically, it documents the contractor. It puts in the inspections that we want to make sure we do. And it establishes the fees. And then that's what a permit that the same contractor ended up signing at the bottom looks like. But it does kind of clean itself up. And then here's what an inspection card looks like, and it looks like a whole lot of information right there. But basically, that's just for an HVAC change out. And the way we have it set up is it's like a job ready list. So the contractor could look almost for every little thing we're looking for before he even calls. That way, we hopefully can only go out once, save ourselves a trip, and then they know that we're looking for that extensive list of quality. So a lot of our over-the-counter cards, they look really long and extensive, but they're really used as a check and balance in the field. That way, before we get there, hopefully we eliminate having to come back. And it's been pretty successful. We have an extensive card like that for water heaters, HVAC, re-roofs, and the stucco. So it works well. And then in the non-over-the-counter permits, they are pretty extensive too, and that's what Mike gets to deal with. So, but it basically breaks down every little subtype. So, and then on the back of our inspection card, we just have that calendar to make sure we don't mess up a contractor on the days that we will be out. But on the Fridays that the city is closed, we still go out and do the inspection. Where the city offices are closed to the public, we're still open to the public. And that's the joy of over-counter permits.
I did have another question. How long does it take, say, to get a permit across the counter for, I don't know, say a air conditioning change out? And approximately how much does it cost?
As long as no one's in there, I bet you Tia could whip that out in 7 minutes. And an HVAC change out is about $328.
So is there scheduled fees so that the public can access those fees online, or?
Yeah, it's online and it's at the office as well. The fee schedule's posted. Yeah.
Isn't it also true that in most cases, like with our local HVAC providers, they're actually the ones going to be pulling the permits?
Wait, say it one more time?
Example, Giddens Brothers or Chavez Air Conditioning in town. If they're doing a change out on a property, usually they're the ones pulling the permits.
Yeah, they pull the permits, and almost always we encourage, like if a property owner comes in maybe with a company that's not from here and says, hey, I'm here to pull the permit on behalf of the HVAC contractor, they're allowed to by law to do that, but by doing that, they're assuming they're going to carry the work comp on their house insurance form. So we really try to educate them at the counter. Hey, this plumber might have said, hey, it's easier if you do it, I'll knock off $50 for you, but really you're running a higher risk. It's still up to them as the property owners, but we try to say, hey, you're hiring someone licensed for a reason, like keep that license in your pocket. So,
any more questions? Yeah. Thank you, John.
All right, thank you guys.
Thanks, John.
All right. Moving on to public comment.
Under Government Code Section 54954.3, members of the public may address the council on non-agenda items. Speakers may address council on any agenda item during consideration of the item. Speakers shall restrict their comments to issues that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council and limit comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Please fill out a speaker sheet located on the table inside the entrances to the council chambers and forward the completed speaker sheet to the clerk.
And just as a reminder, this is your chance to voice your opinion or concerns. If you have questions of staff, please set up an appointment with that staff member and or council member. And what do we have? Rick Walters.
Thank you, Council. As you know, I've been up here about 7 or 8 times trying to get my water meter read, and I'm getting a pushback from Councilman Cruz on it. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm overpaying the city. And there is a law on the books that says that you can only charge, the meter, once it's in, has to go for 1 year, and then the city has to start reading it. That's what the law states. In the staff report, it says, additionally, state law recognizes the potential need for a delay in implementing metered rates following meter installation, allowing local agencies up to a year to convert customers to meter rates after meters are installed. That's the law. To an attorney, and I got the water code, says the same thing. I'm just wondering if you've read the water code. Any of you up there have read the water code? Yes, I can answer, okay? So I'm here once again to ask you, I've had my meter installed for 10 months now, and another 2 months is going to be the year, and I want to know if this council is going to ask the Public Works to start reading my water meter within the 1 year allowed by the law. In other words, is this council going to follow the law? That's either a yes or no answer.
Is that your end of your comment, sir?
No, I still have some time left.
Okay.
I'm still curious why you're being so silent.
This is your chance to make your concerns and comments, sir.
And I understand how the game is played, but your refusal is just outstanding. I just don't understand why you're just digging your heels. Why are you being this way that you won't answer my question?
Mr. Mayor, just as a clarification, Mr. Walters, this is a time for you to provide testimony to the City Council. It's not an opportunity for you to interrogate the members of the council. So you have 2 minutes and 20 seconds left to finish your testimony to the City Council.
Well, I disagree with that, and you can't show me any paperwork that shows that, can you?
Yes, I can show you that.
Can we show that at the next meeting, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you very much. In the meantime, the question is still out there. I guess what I'm going to have to do is go to the Water Quality Control Board, which I've talked to, and they've suggested that I file a formal complaint against the City of Galt, which I guess I'm going to have to do. And then after that, if we don't get any satisfaction there, I guess the last resort would be to sue the city for something that you don't even want to answer on. It has nothing to do with me just talking. The interaction here is what the City Council is all about. Everybody knows that. It's taught in school. Now you're telling them, no? This is crazy. So, thank you. I've said what I had to say, and you know what I'm going to do.
Thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Motion by Councilmember Powers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Payne. Call for the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne? Aye. Councilmember Hewer?
Aye.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Cruz?
Aye. Passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to, back up here. West Side Galt Lighting Landscape and Maintenance District, 1990-2. Mr. Winkler.
Council members, this is our annual hearing at which we ask you to adopt the what will go on the tax rolls for our 3 special landscape and lighting districts in the city. And we're going to make a combined presentation for purposes of brevity that will touch on all 3 districts. And Mr. Bill Forrest will be making that presentation. We'd ask at the conclusion, after any questions or public input, that you actually hold an individual public hearing for each district.
Very good.
Good evening, Mayor Cruz and council members. I believe this is the 8th or 9th time I've presented our annual assessments for the 3 landscaping and lighting districts for the city of Galt. Starting with the West Side Galt Lighting Landscaping and Maintenance District, this is a map of the affected and assessed parcels in the city. There were no annexations into the West Side District or subdivision of existing parcels in the past fiscal year. The assessments per parcel are fixed and have not changed since the district was formed in the early 1990s. Typical assessments for a single-family dwelling residential parcel ranges from $36.62 to $221.80, and the variation is dependent upon which benefit zone the particular parcel lies within. During past council meetings, has been reported that expenditures have exceeded revenues, and for this fiscal year, as per the adopted midterm budget, there will be a general fund loan to the West Side L&L of approximately $14,300, as well as service reductions of estimated to be about $17,000, mostly in heat, light, and power, and with reductions in water usage. So that's where the anticipated savings will be for that particular district. The Northeast Galt Landscaping Lighting District is obviously the northeast quadrant of the city. There were no annexations of additional properties or subdivisions of existing parcels for the past fiscal year. There was one city-owned property, the River Oaks Well, which was dropped from the assessment rolls. The assessments per parcels are fixed and have not changed since the district's inception, also in the early 1990s. Typical assessments for a single-family residential parcel ranges from $51.70 in the district to $301.85, again, depending on which benefit zone as well as size of the relative parcel. During past council meetings, it has also been reported for this district that expenditures have been exceeding revenues. For example, in fiscal year 15-16, expenditures will exceed revenues by approximately $150,000. It is likely that available reserves will be depleted by the end of this fiscal year. The newest district, Landscaping and Lighting District number 3, which was formed in 2005, encompasses the area on the west side of the highway in the newly developed areas. There was a subdivision of an existing parcel, the Creekside 3, which subdivided the large parcel into 71 lots. In addition, commercial property, this is the first one in this particular district, annexed into the district, and this represents the Family Dollar parcel at the corner of A and Lincoln. The assessments per parcel can be adjusted by the Consumer Price Index. The minimum allowed by the formation documents is 1.5%. For this particular year, the CPI index only increased by 0.68%, so the 1.5 minimum allowed is recommended, and that's reflected in the assessment. The maximum assessment for a single-family residence parcel would be $302.78, which represents roughly a $4 and I think $46 increase from last year. This fiscal year, there will be a general fund subsidy to this lighting landscape district of approximately $34,000 to balance the fund, which is subject of a budget change adjustment, which is also part of the landscape and lighting district number 3. Mr. Winkler will now discuss the future path forward for particularly the northeast and the west side districts.
So you've heard a pretty grim picture. All 3 districts are in the red, both on an annual basis and now on an ongoing basis, without some kind of either major reduction in levels of service, which could be reducing park maintenance, reducing landscape maintenance, turning street lights off. Obviously, we would like to give the constituency of these districts the opportunity to avoid service cuts, and that would have to take the form of a Prop 218 ballot election for those services. We do intend to bring back consultant recommendations for revised fees that would try to keep those districts solvent. That might include some cost savings recommendations as part of that. So later this year, we're commissioning that study and bringing back those results. The bottom line is that we're either going to have to make major service cuts, or we're going to have to have voter approval of increased fees within these districts to make next year work. We're running out of reserves, and we're already subsidizing 2 of the districts in the form of loans or one-time subsidies to deal with the service levels. So we will be bringing those back to you for further formal recommendations and consideration, and with your concurrence, we would then go out with Prop 218 notices probably after New Year's. The goal would be to have those in place and effective for the next fiscal year so they can be put on the tax rolls for next year.
All right. With that, we will open the public hearings on the West Side Galt Lighting Landscape and Maintenance District. Open for public comment at this time. Seeing no comment, we will close the public hearing. Do I have a motion to adopt a resolution approving the West Side Galt Lighting, Landscaping, and Maintenance District 1990-2 engineering report and levying of the annual assessments for the fiscal year 2015-2016?
So moved.
Have a move by Vice Mayor, motion by Vice Mayor Payne. Second? Second by Councilmember Hewer. Call for the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne?
Aye.
Councilmember Hewer?
Aye.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Cruz?
Aye. Vote is unanimous, 4-0. Okay, moving on to the next one. We will now open the public hearing on the Northeast Galt Landscaping and Lighting District. We're open for public comment at this time. Seeing no public comment, we will now close the hearing. Do I have a motion to adopt a resolution approving the Northeast Galt Landscaping and Lighting District Engineers Report and levying of annual assessments for the fiscal year 2015-2016?
Can I make a motion? I move.
Motion by Vice Mayor, Councilmember Powers.
Second.
Have a second by Vice Mayor Payne. Call for the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne?
Aye.
Councilmember Hewer?
Aye.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Cruz?
Aye. Passes unanimously 4-0. And last, we will now open a public hearing on the City of Galt Landscaping and Lighting District Number 3. We're now open for public hearing. Seeing no public comment, we will close. Do I have a motion to adopt a resolution approving the City of Galt Landscaping and Lighting District Number 3 Engineers Report and levying of annual assessments for the fiscal year 2015-2016?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Vice Mayor Payne, second by Councilmember Powers. Thank you. Call for the vote.
Vice Mayor Payne?
Aye.
Councilmember Hewer?
Aye.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Cruz?
Aye. Again, 4-0. All right. Moving on to City Council office reports, starting with discretionary funds for Councilmember Campion. But before that, I have a speaker sheet. Dan Jimenez.
I was going to direct my concerns to Councilmember Campion, but he's not here tonight, so. Nonetheless, is this thing still going to go forward?
Yes, sir.
Dan Jimenez, and I live in the city. My concerns with this, I was going to ask, on June 2nd, Councilmember Campion put in a request to use his discretionary funds of $600 for the McFarland Ranch restroom project. I wanted to know, did that go through? Did he give him the $600 for that? He did? So now he's turning around. It makes it awkward because he's not here. We're talking to an empty chair.
You are talking.
I am. And now he's asking to donate another $600 to the McFarland Ranch for another project. First of all, I'm against all of these having discretionary funds to begin with, because you're a tight-knit group up there where you determine how much funds you're going to have during the year. Then you vote for one another on your little projects or people that you want to give funds to. And you're the only ones that control it. I mean, it seems corrupt to me in a way. Okay. Now, I thought there was a process that anybody, well, the nonprofits could come and submit to the city an application for a project they want done. And then the city would then, you folks would vote on, yay or nay on that thing. And to me, this is just another end round run at that process. Why have a process if you're going to be donating money to your favorite charities? I don't get it. That's why I say it's corrupt and it's broken. So, is there, Mr. Berman, a process for that they can come to the city and apply for funds?
Yes, there's a process in the spring where the city advertises and the nonprofit groups can come forward, and $10,000 is set aside for that.
So, you see what I'm saying? Is that you're now making an end run. You have the discretion to do that. Doesn't that ring a bell that maybe you shouldn't be doing that? And I know you're not going to answer because you're just going to stare at me because you don't have to answer questions, which is a shame because there's no engagement with the city, and for that I got to say shame on all of you who asked this, and shame for the process that you have going. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, do I have a motion? So a motion to approve discretionary funds for the McFarland Ranch Living History on behalf of Councilmember Campion.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Mayor Payne. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Hewer. Yes, ma'am.
So to address the community's concern, discretionary funds are currently 1,500 a council member? 1,000 council members. Okay. And so Mr. Councilman Campion took that 600 out of his last fiscal budget year, and then 600 out of this fiscal budget year. Correct? Correct. That's the request?
I think that the other point to make on this is that the discretionary funds are at the discretion of the council to use for projects that they feel have a public benefit. So that is always the test for the use of any of the public's money. And on this particular request, Councilmember Campion is of the opinion that this money would benefit the public to be used for the McFarland Living History Ranch project.
Thank you.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. Call for the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne?
Aye.
Councilmember Hewer?
Aye.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Cruz?
Aye. 4-0. Moving on to the City Attorney's Office, Noise Control Standards. Mr. Rudolph.
Yes, good evening again, Mayor and Council members. This ordinance was first brought to the City Council at the last regular meeting. The purpose of the ordinance is to maintain consistency between the development code and this particular chapter of the municipal code. At the last meeting, there were two comments by council members. First, there was a mistake in the ordinance where it inadvertently applied to commercial and industrial property. And so that has been corrected. If you see under section 8.40040, the listing of the properties that it applies to includes residential and mixed-use zone properties only. So this is now consistent with the development code. The second comment that was made during the discussion related to the exemptions under the ordinance, and there was concern expressed that the exemptions did not allow the pouring of concrete during the summer months. So there has been a statement added to the end of one of the exemptions under E that says that from June through September, the pouring of concrete may occur starting at 5 a.m. on weekdays. So it was my understanding from the comments that that particular exemption would address the concern that was expressed. So absent, or with those two changes, the ordinance is again presented for your consideration. If it meets your, if it's acceptable to the City Council, then I would recommend that you introduce the ordinance amending this particular chapter of the Municipal Code, waive the full reading, and continue to the next regular meeting for adoption.
Do you need an official motion in that respect, or?
Yes, if there's no comments.
Okay. Council, do we have comments?
I have none.
Do I have a motion to continue to the next meeting and adopt?
So, okay, just for clarification, that's to introduce the ordinance, waive full reading, and continue to the next
Correct.
meeting. Thank you.
Motion by Councilmember Hewer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Powers. Call for the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne.
Aye.
Councilmember Hewer.
Aye.
Councilmember Powers.
Aye.
Mayor Cruz.
Aye. Unanimous vote. Moving on to the next, City Manager's Office, Agreement for Animal Care and Regulation Services.
Good evening,
Mr.
Mr.
Behrman.
Mayor, members of the City Council. My privilege to present this item to you this evening. The city currently has an agreement with Sacramento County, have for a number of years since 1997, to provide animal care field services for the city of Galt, as well as sheltering services, which is done through the shelter at Bradshaw in Sacramento County. The contract amount is approximately $20,000 annually and has been that amount since 1997. The county has failed to provide the city with annual updates on its costs, and within the last year or so sent the city notification that the costs were far in excess of the revenue provided by the city, and so they were going to be terminating the contract effective July 1, 2015. Fortunately, they provided sufficient notification, so we've been working with them for the last year on negotiating a new contract, which is what's being presented to you this evening for council consideration. The new contract is similar to the old one as far as the level of services provided. The city has assumed a number of animal control related responsibilities over the years because one, we're somewhat isolated from the rest of Sacramento County, and to reduce costs, the police department in particular has assumed some of those responsibilities. Things such as returning stray dogs, animals when they find them, responding to barking dog complaints. We hold animals in a facility that we have at the police department for collection or pickup of animal control. At least once a day, they come by and pick up those animals. So we have provided those. We will continue to provide those services. That allows us to keep our costs to a minimum going forward. Normally, the county operates with its arrangements or its agreements with other cities in the county by the jurisdiction paying a per capita cost based on the level of, not only the level of service, but the population in the community. And for the city of Galt, we represent approximately 3% of the county population in the service territory, the areas that they provide. And that would result normally in a cost to the city of about $100,000 a year. That would be our per capita share. But through negotiations, the county recognized that we're providing some levels of service. We're more distant from the county and their Bradshaw facility, and so we were able to negotiate a reduced contribution of 1.5%. And so that got the annual contract amount down from $180,000 to approximately $87,000 a year in the first year. It's a 3-year deal, and that contract amount will be escalated every year based on the actual cost of services or the cost provided by the county. And it may or may not be the simple CPI adjustment. It's not a set percentage. It'll be based on the cost of service provided by the county at the time. But that's the estimate in the first year, and that likely will be adjusted in year 2 and year 3. I also want to point out, and it's mentioned in the staff report, that that $87,000 does include a credit back to the city of $15,000, and that's in two reasons. That's in recognition of the distance between the city and the shelter, and the fact that our residents are not traveling up there as often and taking advantage of some of the services provided at the shelter. The other thing is we've started discussions about the possibility of opening up an animal adoption center down here in Galt. I know Councilmember Powers has been very actively pursuing that, having conversations with Don Natoli about the county contributing some funds to making that happen. I know there's a nonprofit in the works to try to help to run that operation. So those discussions are still in the works. Hope to bring something back to the council over the coming weeks. We can flush that out a little bit, but there is a recognition of the city's efforts and of that amount going forward in this contract. So we'll look forward to providing some more details as that is hammered out down the road. So let's see here. So the financial impact, the current budget does include an amount for animal control services of approximately $60,000, $59,630 to be specific. The new contract is approximately $87,000, so that means the city staff is requesting a budget appropriation, a supplemental appropriation of $28,000 to cover the cost of the new agreement for fiscal year 2015-16. There is also a limit on the number of animals, not a limit, but right now there's an allocation that the city can, the county animal shelter will receive up to 300 animals from the city of Galt over that period of time. If there's more animals received, they will receive them, but there'll be an additional charge associated with that. And right now we're averaging about 200 animals a year, so we're not really anywhere near that 300 animal threshold, so we're not really concerned, but they wanted to put a limit in there, and so that's what we did. As far as alternatives go, we did explore various alternatives, talked to some other cities nearby about the provision of animal control services, specifically field services as well as shelter services. And there aren't a lot of shelter options nearby. The shelters that are somewhat close are full, and the agencies were not interested in looking at a new agreement with the city. There are some discussions about the possibility of building new shelters in the future. There's one down near Lodi that's in the works right now. There's also talk up in Elk Grove that they may be interested in exploring new shelters. So I think down the road, maybe by the time this term ends, there will be new shelters in place, and the city can look at exploring. Doesn't mean the city would have to, but at least it opens up new options and new alternatives for the city to consider. At that time, the council may also be interested in looking at alternative provision for field services, whether the city wants to do it in-house or contract with another agency, such as, Sac County is always going to be an option, but Elk Grove or Lodi may be options in the future as well. So at this time, we're not recommending that the council pursue any of those alternatives. We think the deal that we've been able to negotiate with the county is fair and provide an adequate level of service for the city. And with that, I would recommend that the council adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the new agreement for animal care and regulation services with Sacramento County and appropriate the amount of $28,000 for fiscal year 15-16.
All right.
And
Thank you,
happy
sir.
to answer any
Any
questions.
from council?
I do.
I have a comment after she is.
Okay. One of the things I think we get the most complaints about is barking dogs. And according to the grid, the process, if you have that problem, is for the complainant to do a citation. Do they deliver that to the people that have the barking dog? And that's the only way that they will get a response? Is that correct?
Maybe I can have our lieutenant come down here and explain the process that we utilize for barking dogs.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So it is our goal not to engage animal control if we don't have to. So that is, oftentimes we'll get calls to the dispatch center for barking dogs, and we will go out, and if there is a barking dog and it's a simple contact and we can address the issue, we handle it that way. If it's, we can't reach somebody or nobody's home, we have a red flyer that we place on the door with a business card and ask for a call back. So those routes occur long before we would want the residents to engage with animal control and use a citation route. Obviously, the citation route is the sort of maximum enforcement available for that issue.
So the police go out first,
Yes.
and then if that continues, then it's up to the owner of, well, not the owner of the dog, but the complaining party to write a citation and hand it over to.
Yeah, so animal control will send them an affidavit that they'll fill out, and based on the affidavit that resident, and at any point they can opt to do that in the process, fills that out and submits it to animal control, and animal control will mail a citation to the offending party. But we,
So the person doesn't actually have to have contact with their neighbor with the barking dog or something?
no,
Okay.
and oftentimes though, contact with the neighbor and a simple discussion goes a long way to address the issue, because oftentimes people aren't aware when they're not home that there may potentially be a problem. So we've engaged with conflict resolution services and mediation services with the county that we have access to in one neighborhood problem, right? Myriad of other issues in another neighborhood, work itself out. But so we are actively engaged. This is a process that, as us doing less work, it just sort of codifies and explains what the expectations are on both sides, because in an effort to maintain costs, we've sort of done it the best way we can in the unwritten way. So this just helps us out.
Okay. I have one more question, if I could, then and this probably isn't a question for you, but on item number 807, it said, this is about a dead cat, owner's dead cat. We charge $50, but it says no service. What's happening there? I'm not saying someone charges $50, but it says there's no service regarding the dead cat.
Yeah. Is it in
Let me,
the table?
let me help you out, Jason.
Okay.
That's the no services from the county. So with Cal Waste, we have a contract in place that there is no charge for that. And there is a weight limit, but staff has informed me up to the size of a deer has been picked up by Cal Waste without complaint, and it's been no charge.
Well,
The county's level of service, but the contract affords us a different option.
seeing Cal Waste here, I'd say thank you for getting that dead cat taken care of.
Stay here. I have a question.
Yeah.
So if a stray dog is picked up by the police, do we check for a chip and an ID to reunite with its owner before we call the county to pick up the animal?
Yes, and then Mayor Powers provided us with a scanner that was donated, so that's what we use in-house to find a chip. If we can get a chip, contacting animal control, and get an address, we'll attempt to make contact or leave a message. If we make, and that was a question that Councilmember Powers had, if we reach somebody that they said aren't going to be in town till 4 o'clock, certainly we're not going to load the animal up and send them off to animal control. We recognize that many times these are family pets in some way, and so it's our job to get the pets back in the same, if not better shape than when we found them.
Well, my thunder. So we do try to scan them.
Yes, we scan them, research it. Sometimes people will know where the animal is. Oh, I know it's from around the corner. So staff will, make efforts to figure out where that might be if there is no chip. So we do our due diligence before we kennel them at the police department.
Right.
My thunder always gets stolen because I'm so polite to wait to be last. But I did want to thank you. I went down there and saw, and I want to thank the police department. I know that that's not your favorite thing to do, but I appreciate that we're a small town and that you have caring and compassion for the animals out here and for the people that own the animals. Their dog could get out and they could go to work and not be able to get back till after 5 or 6, and you guys take good care of the dogs while they're there. And it doesn't happen every day, but I think it's nice to know that pets can be safe in the city with the police department looking after them. Like, I know it's not your favorite job to do, but I appreciate the compassion and caring that you and all of your officers show to all those little critters out there every day.
Well, I will pass that message back to the staff that does that work. I just get the benefit from the good work that you do. So, This document is a living and breathing document, so obviously we've, agreed to meet with animal control as we need to, work out any wrinkles that happen, but I don't expect that we will have that, because they've been pretty receptive, at least in the meetings I went to
Yeah.
regarding the issue.
Stick around.
Mhm.
Actually, I'm last. I do that
Oh.
on purpose. I know we handle cats and dogs without any issue. What about, wild animals, considering where we live? We have a lot of issues with raccoons and with possums and so forth. And I know animal control doesn't handle that. I mean, how are we dealing with that issue?
Well, we are still directed to call animal control, and they will make it so if there is a call to a third party, that they would contract for a specific wild animal at a specific location, they will use that, third party, so it could be, you put me on the spot, I can't think of who it would be off the top, but, there is a provision in the table for the wild animals. Right, it's a priority response for them, so if they are not gonna handle it, with the person assigned to the truck, they have a contract that does that on our behalf, so we brought that up because there are, sort of as you get closer to the city limits, that opportunity.
There are rescue groups in town, and there are rescue groups that will come out and get animals. I just rescued 3 baby possums not very long ago and sent them out to a rescue group, and they're doing good.
Yeah, generally, in those kind of cases, time's on our side,
Yeah.
so.
And there's a good network on Facebook and stuff too with Galt Animal Lost and Found that people are willing to, foster animals that are found. We have a really good group here working with the police and animal control and taking care of animals.
Okay. Thank you, LB. Okay, I'm looking to get a motion to adopt a resolution I moved one. Adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the new agreement for animal care and regulation services with Sacramento County and approving an appropriation in the amount of $28,000 for fiscal year 2015-2016.
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Powers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hewer. Call for the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne? Aye. Councilmember Hewer? Aye. Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Cruz?
Aye, unanimous. Moving on to public education and government funding, otherwise known as PEG.
All right,
Chairman.
I'll make this quick. This is good news. The city has been awarded a grant from Sacramento Cable in the amount of $16,891 to continue to do the upgrade work here in the council chambers. This work will entail installation, not the purchase, we already purchased some new cameras, but the installation of some new high-definition cameras, as well as some sound upgrades. I know we've been having a few sound issues, and it'll allow the control technicians in the back to be able to control the sound that gets broadcast on the internet and on cable TV to be heard differently than what's in this room. So there's different ways that they can adjust and the sound inputs for the council meeting. So it's a relatively small amount of grant money this year, but this is all that the city put in for its request, and so I would recommend the council adopt a resolution accepting the PEG grant funding in the amount of $689,891.
Okay.
Very good.
Any questions by council? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Mayor Payne. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Powers. Call for the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne? Aye. Councilmember Hewer? Aye. Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Cruz?
Aye, unanimous. Moving on to Culture and Recreation Department. The Galt Police Activities League requests for co-sponsorship of a scooter and skateboard competition on August 8th, 2015. You don't look like Armando.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Our department received a letter from PAL requesting that we co-sponsor a scooter and skateboard competition this coming Saturday. In the request, they asked that they borrow canopies, tables, and a snow cone machine along with the supplies that would go with that.
Okay, any questions? Sorry. Any questions from council? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Mayor Payne. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Powers. Please call for the vote.
Vice Mayor Payne? Aye. Councilmember Hewer? Aye. Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Cruz?
Aye, unanimous. Okay. Moving on to the Galt Community Character Coalition, additional requests for the Heritage Festival.
Good evening.
Part 2.
Yes. So at the May 5th, the City Council meeting, City Council approved co-sponsoring the Galt Community of Character Coalition's Heritage Festival on August 29th, and that included Parks and Recreation staff, event insurance, and porta potties. Since then, we have received an additional request, and we would like your direction on that. That does include pickup, setup, and return of a stage that would be used at the event, 2 employees that would help with all of the equipment delivery and pickup, which amounts to about 7 hours for each employee. The trash recyclable liners that will cost about $40, and then help with the road closures and traffic control from the Public Works Department. The additional request amounts to $1,516, and we would like your direction on that.
Okay, and before we discuss this, I have a public speaker sheet. Al Baldwin.
Good evening, you all. Wonderful council. Short-timer Jason Bierman. Good to see you all tonight. Al Baldwin, a concerned citizen of Galt and a member of the Character Coalition. I'm up here to thank you for all the help from the Parks and Rec, the council, the people involved, the city, and to get this Heritage Festival on its way. A lot of people don't realize what this festival is, when it is, and why we even have it. And I just want to read something very shortly to let you know. But I did want to thank you because it's major, the donations, the time involved, the people. It's wonderful. It's going to be in town here in Galt. The Galt Heritage Festival is a celebration of the history of Galt, the various cultures that contributed to the creation of the community, and the impact of the railroad on Galt. It will feature many community organizations and businesses, people, food, entertainment, and exhibits reflecting the cultural heritage and history of Galt. Historical tours of Galt include the Ray House and the McFarland Living Ranch, agriculture exhibits, and a newly established community garden. And I believe there is some vegetables growing in the garden at this time. Its sponsors include the Galt Community of Character Coalition, the Galt Historical Society, the Galt Herald, the City of Galt, Galt Union High School District, and the Galt Elementary School District, which we even have a board member from them here tonight. So it's quite a thing for this to go on. It's going to be August 29th, it's a Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. You're going to be blown away. It's in the center of town. Well, it used to be the center of town. The town has expanded a little bit. But I think you're going to enjoy coming to it, seeing what's there, and all the work that the community and the Parks and Rec and you on the council have contributed to this. It's just overwhelming and amazing. I want to thank you so very much for this. I appreciate it, and it shows the community respects its town and wants to show it off, and you should. This is a wonderful place to live, and even with water meters.
Thank you, Al. All right. Looking to review the okay, looking for a motion to accept the review of the Galt Heritage Festival Coalition request for additional staffing and equipment for the Heritage Festival, and if approved, appropriate funding in an amount of $1,516 as shown on the budget change form. So do I have a move to that effect?
I have questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So previously, we gave $535, and now the request is for another $1,516, correct? I'm reading that correctly. In the first request, it was stated that they would be getting sponsors from the community. Do we know, Mr. Berman, has that happened?
I don't know. Is there a representative from the group here?
I tried to not have to talk, but that's okay. Yes, we've actually received a little over $5,000, almost $6,000 from it, but as this has grown, we're at our budget at this point.
We need seating for people. This is where the extra expenses are coming in. It's in the middle of the summer, so we can't have our performers. We have to have a tent over them, which that probably right there was our biggest expense. So we have had quite a few businesses that have really stepped up and really helped us. We were actually surprised, to be honest with you, at how excited everybody's been about it. But, so yes, they have.
So, Robert, if you're going to speak for the group, and I'll direct some of my questions to you. So, I understand that the need for equipment, the need for the equipment. I don't have any, any comments about that. But I do have comments regarding staff time. I mean, we're having to expend most of this money for staff time, overtime, paying staff overtime for things like setup and shutdown.
We're doing the setup. I think, because I talked to Armando a little bit, and Monica probably can speak more for the staff cost, or even Jason, but I think we just need it delivered, like the chairs, the tables, some of the things that have been requested. Our biggest request is that the city pick up the stage. That's probably, I'm assuming, where one of the bigger expenses is coming from, picking up the stage in Sacramento and bringing it back down and setting up. Part of the reason why we would really appreciate that portion of it is because the city staff is experienced in doing it, because it's the same vendor that the city uses for their events when they use staging. We are paying the state, we're covering those costs, but yeah, you're right, and I agree with you. It is a huge expense. That's probably where the biggest staff portion of it. But we have volunteers to set up the chairs, take them down, but it is, it is staff time to have to come and bring the equipment.
So is that, Monica, is that what the staff time's for, to pick up the stage and to bring it to Galt and to set it up? I mean,
Part of it.
A large amount of staff time.
Right. If you're looking at the stage, we're looking at $292 for the full-time employee and $62 for the part-time employee. So the full-time employee can pick up the stage by himself, but then the part-time employee is needed to help set it up. So that's the first portion of money. And then the second part, equipment delivery pickup. We have two employees at 3.5 hours delivery and 3.5 hours pickup. So that's loading the trailers, getting everything picked up from the different areas, things at the market, we have things at Parks and Rec. So we have to put all of that into the trailer and get it to the site and unload it, as well as at the end of the event, loading it back onto the stage and taking it back to its proper place. So those are what those are. And then Steve might be able to talk better about the road closures and traffic control. And that part.
So we're using city, and I assume the cost of city vehicles going to Sacramento, and
yes,
that's not put in this. There's nothing in here about the use of city vehicles.
Correct.
So maintenance workers to close the roads. It's also overtime.
It depends. We do have some workers that are scheduled to work weekends, mainly in the Parks Facilities Group, but for road closures, special changeable message signs, delivering barricades, supporting PD, and doing the traffic control setup. Those typically would fall to Public Works Department. We don't want just anybody closing roads, so that's a normal practice for a major event or a parade of this sort of thing. I think they're also, Parks is going to be setting up some safety fencing on the west side of the railroad, still part of the plan.
And some weed removal.
I think that's been done.
Removal.
I think it's been.
The weed removal's been done. That's already been taken care of. It would have been done.
In these spots?
Yeah.
So I would, if the city is willing to have this be a partially sponsored event, then that would typically be those overtime costs.
So this cost estimate doesn't include any PD time. So are we anticipating that our police department's going to be taken away from regular duties to traffic patrol?
We're not anticipating any overtime, and I don't believe there's going to be a request for significant police presence for traffic control, at least now that I heard.
I could
The
respond to
event's
that.
becoming large. Is there security? Will we request, is there any security requests, or?
What I would respond to the traffic control, we've contacted the volunteers, CAPS, that will come out and help direct the traffic, because 3rd and 2nd Street will be closed. And coming off of C Street,
we feel like that's a busy street. We need people that are familiar with traffic control, so CAPS will be volunteering to come out and help with that. The other thing I would like to mention is this is, yes, it's a celebration for the founding of Galt and also the Lincoln Highway, but the main force behind this is because we're trying to reclaim an area of our town that is historical. And it's been, we've had some major tragedies in the area. As you know, our officer Tom was killed in the areas there, as well as animal control officer, and a 17-year-old young man was shot in his front yard. This is an area where Dr. Harvey used. We have we had two churches that are over 150 years old. So we don't want to let this area of our town go to crime and blight. So this is one of the reasons why we're doing it, not just to have fun or have another festival, but we're actually trying to reclaim an important part of our community, and this is the way that we're going about it. We did receive a grant explaining the area, and we're putting in new playground equipment. So it's an effort that other cities have done to take an area that is having severe problems like we have out there and try to revitalize it, reclaim it, and make it an area where people can feel safe. And that's the reason. The reason that we're celebrating this is because at the end of August, we should have our new playground equipment. The community garden is already well underway. And we want this to become an active part of the community. We're encouraging the churches to hold events in Harvey Park, and recently one of our churches actually had a service in Harvey Park, followed with picnics and fun for the families, which is what our goal is for that area. A lot of volunteers have been working on this for a lot of hours. If we counted that, it would be well in excess to what we're asking for. And it is a collaboration between the schools, they're participating, as well as businesses, people in the area. So I hope you feel that it's worth $1,500 for the effort that we're doing. Okay.
We're talking over 2,000 now.
2,000.
And I'm not saying that I don't think that the Heritage Festival is a worthwhile event, or anything at Harvey Park. I live in the area. I absolutely support the revitalization of Harvey Park. My concern is that, as I said before, city provides money to these events. We get no financial accounting as a council or as a community regarding how our money is spent or how the money for these events are spent. These events are held, the community provides support for it, it's the community's tax dollars. We are cutting services to areas of our community in regarding to parks and landscaping. And at the same time, and this comes straight out of the general fund. I mean, Parks and Rec, everyone should be aware, the 06 fund, these sort of expenditures come straight from the general fund. They're not coming from Parks and Rec anymore. It's coming straight out of the general fund, correct? I mean, that's what they're performing. So my concern is when we start hitting the general fund for these sorts of things, that there is some sort of accounting. And there has not been, in my opinion, a very good accounting to the community regarding these kind of events and how the money is spent and any sort of financial accounting afterwards. I have no difficulty providing support to the Heritage Festival. What I want in return as a council and as a community member is to know how that money was spent, because this is a private organization. Galt Community Coalition is not a city. It's not under our budget. It's not under the jurisdiction of our city staff. This is under this is a private group. Much as PALS is also, the expenditure we made earlier. All of these private organizations that come to the city and request financing, I think we owe it to the city and owe it to the taxpayers to show us what they're spending and how our money was spent. And if they made a profit, then the organization needs to be repaying the city for some of those services, in my opinion. that those profits need to not be going to a private organization, well, we ask the tax dollars to fund it, the taxpayers to fund it. That's just my feeling on the issue. I've said it before, I'll continue to say it. We have community members that are worried about council members' discretionary funds. And at the same time, we continue to make expenditures of dollars and have no real accountability back to us about how that's spent.
I would just say it's going to be hard to account for the benefits that occur when you have a festival, when people come into the community, and we're going to have performers that will be attracting people from all over the area. So I don't know how do you put a figure on something like that. In addition to that, our economic development consultant that we had sometime in the past, that was one of the things that he or she suggested that we do, is have more events like this, especially in the Old Town area that we're trying to, again, revitalize. So, you know, I feel that our goals are good. I feel like the city, what they're putting into it, benefits from it, as well as the community. There is no charge to anyone to attend this festival. It's open to the public.
Well, I just want to say, and I know what we have to do when we had the 4th of July, I think Lori's just asking for a basic profit and loss statement. You know, give us a profit and loss statement of what you spent, what, you know, how many people showed up. That's not really asking a lot. When we took over, the city took over the 4th of July, we have to do that every year, and we had a budget of 10 grand, and we had to go out and get the 10 grand. So I just think that accountability is what everybody is looking for, and I think we discussed that before a while back about where do we know this money's going. You know, when we were doing our discretionary funds, it's like we give you the money, but you've got to bring something back that shows us where it went to. And that's all we're asking for. It's just a simple statement of what did you spend, if you got any money, you know, if you got over and above, you know, what are you doing with the money that's left over? And I don't think that's asking too much for a profit and loss statement.
I think that the organizations are going to ask the city for money, then they owe it to the city to account for what they're doing with their money. Otherwise, don't come ask the city for money. If you don't want to account, you don't want to tell the city how you're spending your funds and what you're doing with your funds, and it is as simple as giving us a financial statement. If you're not willing to do that, then don't come ask the taxpayers to fund it. That's all I'm saying. And it has nothing to do with thinking that this is not a wonderful event. I have every sincere hope to be there myself, and that it turns into a wonderful event and turns into an annual event. I think you're absolutely right. These events raise the profile of the city. They do wonderful things for the community. They increase sales tax. They increase all sorts of things, and bringing people into and showcasing our city. I absolutely in favor of that. I adore this city. I lived here for almost 30 years, and there's a reason why. So, but I think that if you're going to come ask for money, then you should be prepared to tell us how you're going to spend it, and to tell us in the end how it worked out.
I can't speak 100% for the committee, but I'm just going to put it this way. Since the city is a co-sponsor, I don't have a problem at all with you seeing the budget, personally. You know, I think that's a fair question. The newspaper side of me, which I'm not right now, but the newspaper side of me says, well, if a nonprofit comes to you who's completely absent from you, that might be a little iffy. But, you know, we have 10 things on the budget.
Well,
Advertising, you know, so I'm all for that. We can come report after. If you'd like us to report at the next meeting, you know, what our budget is and the report after, I don't think that's a big deal. I'd come and do that. And I think it's a fair question.
And I'm not saying that it even has to come back to city council. I mean, a report to the city manager that he can send out, that there's a public sort of way for the public to know how their tax dollars are being spent. Because you're right, this is a committee of private citizens. I know that absolutely your hearts are in the right place. You're doing what is a great thing for the community, spending lots of hours doing it. But we're here for 25,000 people, not 5 or 10 or 15. Right? And I don't see requests to the school boards for money, this organization for money. I know you went out and you got sponsors from private organizations and businesses.
Well, the schools are an in-kind type type thing is what, you know, so they are all contributing, and I'm sure it costs them, and they paid for the paint, they paid, you know, that went up on the murals, and you know, there is a financial cost, like, you know, there is, and they haven't asked, but, you know, maybe we should just offer so that they can see. So I understand what you're saying, that it's.
Well, and that's when you put on your profit and loss statement, you put all your in-kind and all your volunteer hours and things like that. So you can actually see what it costs and how much you saved by having volunteers and having people donate stuff.
So I'd make a motion to approve with the stipulation that the city manager be provided following the event with some sort of with a financial report of the expenditure and cost.
I would also like to make a comment. I think if you're going to ask that at this time for this event, that you're going to have to come back with a policy that covers all the events. I'm curious as to why all of a sudden this is coming up. We just gave money to the Historical Society from McFarland Ranch. But I'm saying if you're going to make a policy, or if you're going to say that for this event, then you need to make a policy that covers every event.
And
And
let me
I
just
think
make,
we tried that before. I don't know what happened, because there was somewhere where there would have to be accountability for the money that went out.
well, there is. Let me describe how it works. So if the city's actually contributing money, in this case, we're not contributing money, we're contributing staff time and materials. So we know exactly where the money's being spent. So we're not writing them a check. Okay, so if we write somebody a check, then we actually require them to have an agreement. We actually have them give us a receipt and an invoice, and there's accountability, and there's an agreement. So like when we give money through the nonprofit funding, okay, each of those 2 or 3 groups, there's an agreement. They have to submit invoices and receipts. Then we dole out the money throughout the year for those things, and at the end of the year, they have to come to the council and make a report indicating how they spent the money, and they do that. That's for cash that's actually spent. In the past, you know, the council can certainly change this, but when we've done kind of in-kind contributions, or we've contributed donation of using chairs and canopies and other types of things, then there hasn't been any type of other requirement of a profit loss statement or anything to that extent. Certainly you can ask for it, but that's been the distinction, is when we're actually writing somebody a check or giving somebody money for something, then we require there's a lot more accountability. When it's just a matter of city staff time, not to say that's not an expenditure of funds, because it is, but it's just different because we know exactly that it's being spent in the way that we know how it's being spent, and we're not just writing a check. And so if the council, again, wants to you know, have a policy or requirement that anytime there's a city contribution, whether in kind or financial, that there's an accountability on that event, certainly happy to put that in as a requirement and provide some type of policy that makes it very clear that that's the requirement.
Just as a report back on how the event went, you know, what we, you know.
Yeah, as much detail as you
Because
guys
money
want.
does disappear. I mean, we never know how it went for anything like some of the events we have.
And now I know how Councilmember Powers feels about her thunder being stolen, because that was exactly what I was going to say. It's right there in the report. I mean, it's staff time and nothing else. I think there's some trash liners and other things, but everything's been outlined in that report by itself. So I don't see where anything else in this particular event is anything needed for that money. But I do agree if, in the case like the $10,000 we give out annually, that it's accounted for. I have no issue with that. But in this particular case, we're beating a dead horse. I mean, it's one of those things where we need to just move forward with this to the next item on the agenda, because we all are in agreement on this. We're getting off the path here. Right now, it deals with this particular incident, which is outlined in the report by staff.
Well, all we're saying is just bring a report back when it's done, instead of all this stuff always going just out into the.
No, I agree with that, but
Staff time is money, right? Especially when we're paying staff overtime. We're bringing in staff and paying them overtime.
Which has been outlined in the
We know
report.
how it's being spent, and that's the difference between writing a check to somebody, not knowing how they actually spent it, versus us spending the money directly.
And I understand that, except that my concern is that if in fact, and not just this event, but any event is successful, and yes, this is free to the community, but there are costs incurred by others, so it's free, to a certain extent. Anyway, so, because there's cleanup afterwards, there's all of the things that happen that go on with any kind of event like this, okay? if in fact the event is successful in getting sponsors and having those kinds of events for the community, then should we be paying staff dollars? Should we be paying city dollars out of a fund that doesn't have the funding for it, right? It comes out of the general fund to sponsor an event when maybe if the event was successful and had enough sponsors, they could hire the staff to do this, and we wouldn't be paying city staff to do it. Okay, that's my concern. When we get no accountability, we never know. In fact, if the event was wildly successful and they made money, could have they paid these expenses and not have the taxpayers pay? That's my concern. But maybe we need to bring back the ordinance and look at it. I'll request that for the future.
We have the motion by Councilmember Hewer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Amend my motion.
Amend your motion.
Amend the motion to drop the request for financial report.
Okay.
Okay.
So you have second by Councilmember Powers, and as it stands, it is to, correct me on this, but we've reviewed the Galt Community of Character Coalition request for additional staffing and equipment for Heritage Festival, and to appropriate funding in the amount of $1,516 as shown in the budget change form. That is the motion?
Yes.
And a second by Councilmember Powers. Call for the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne.
Aye.
Councilmember Hewer.
Aye.
Councilmember Powers.
Aye.
Mayor Cruz.
Aye. Motion approved unanimously. Moving on to Public Works. Report on sharps disposal options.
Good evening again. This is a actual follow-through on an item that was presented by the Galt Youth Commission back in March, and they had made a recommendation. The city looked into the possibility of maybe requiring adopting an ordinance that would require mandatory free take-back of sharps, medical sharps, needles, lancets, etc. And so we were asked to bring back a report on potential options, and our staff report does present three sort of fundamental options, and Dennis, our administrative analyst, will be presenting briefly what those three options and what some of our feelers out into the community have produced, and then we would look for further direction as to a preferred option or next steps that we could then follow through with.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff, and audience. Option number one, household hazardous waste facilities. This option is the current contract with the city, the current contract the city has with the City of Sacramento Recycling and Transfer Station and the City of Elk Grove Special Waste Collection Center. Both facilities accept sharps in secure containers, and both provide approved sharps containers for customer use. Elk Grove does further provide containers for distribution at their city hall. In addition, the city does post articles in the Galt Connect newsletter. Most recently, it was published in the July 2015 edition, and then also in the October 2014 edition. During the month of July, just last month, the Galt Herald also published an article on household hazardous waste disposal for the city of Galt, not necessarily specific to sharps disposal, but it was an article and it was mentioned. Option two is voluntary take-back. This option is a voluntary sharps take-back program where Public Works reached out to all retail pharmacies in Galt. That was CVS Pharmacy, Bailey's Pharmacy, Rite Aid Pharmacy, and Walmart. I spoke with all store managers, several regional managers, and a hazmat officer. One retail pharmacy stated their corporate direction was not to take back any sharps or participate in any voluntary program. As of tonight, the other Galt retail pharmacies have not gotten back to me with their response. And all pharmacies have been provided a notification of tonight's agenda. Option number 3, mandatory take-back. This third option is a take-back ordinance. There are multiple agencies with ordinances in place as outlined in the agenda report and also as shown on the slide. The county, Tulare County, San Luis Obispo County, and the City of Sacramento. Should the city decide to move in the direction of an ordinance, items for consideration are development of a local ordinance which would include an outreach program and an enforcement program. We have just learned this week that the County of Sacramento is in the process of developing a county-wide ordinance which would also be applicable to cities. There are several representatives here from agencies and groups tonight who may wish to speak on one or more of the options presented, and the representatives that are here are from the Sacramento County, the Galt Youth Commission, and Cal Waste and Recycling.
So we basically have 3 basic options. There are other variations, but what we're looking for is some direction as to a preferred option. We have status quo with the HHW facilities, which is already part of our budget and is available to any residential customer here in the city. The second option would be to continue to try and pursue a voluntary program, but we've not had much success getting affirmative feedback from the local pharmacies. I think probably one of the major concerns is that if they're not all doing it, that then one gets flooded, and there is a cost to dispose of those sharps in a medically legal disposal option. So it's businesses that do opt to take them back do incur a cost. And I think some of the concerns that we're hearing anecdotally are that if some do and some don't, that those that do get swamped with extra costs and have to raise their prices, and those that don't are sort of taking advantage of the program. So that leads us back to what the Galt Youth Commission originally identified as an option, which would be to develop some sort of a mandatory take-back, and we're interested in hearing more about the county option. They're looking at actually having, Doug Kobold is here with the County of Sacramento today and can speak further to what the county option is being considered. And I think speaker sheet, or if he would just like to come forward, but I'll defer to him on what that is looking like and what the timing might be. So if you're interested in a mandatory program, you might want to hear a little more about what the county is proposing and whether or not that would dovetail nicely with the city's goals.
Okay, and with that, we'll go to the speaker sheets. Mr. Kobold.
Good evening. I'm Doug Kobold, Program Manager for Department of Waste Management and Recycling. I manage our contracts administration, business development, and household hazardous waste programs. And I also wear a second hat. I am the Vice Chair of the California Product Stewardship Council, which is a statewide organization that promotes extended producer responsibility for programs such as take-back of hard-to-recycle household hazardous waste items or other items like that. So I want to give you a quick update on where we are as a county. As Mr. Winkler said, we are currently in the process of introducing or working on a county-wide ordinance through our public health officer to establish a stewardship program for both pharmaceuticals and also sharps.
And the way this would work is that the producers, not the retailers, but the producers would be required to create either a stewardship program of their own, group up and create a stewardship program, or bring in a third-party nonprofit stewardship organization to design, plan, and implement this program that would be at no cost to the retailers or the consumers. All costs are borne by the manufacturers themselves of the various products. And so we look forward to bringing this forward to our board in sometime in late fall of this year, and with timing of vacations and Christmas, and hopefully we'll be fully engaged in, sometime in the spring, but maybe earlier, hopefully. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
So if the county proceeds with that, it would cover the city of Galt.
Yes, what we're planning on doing is, since we're going through the public health office, it is a county-wide applicable ordinance, unless you have a public health officer designated for the city of Galt, which I believe you do not. Actually, I don't believe any of the cities within the county have one, so that would default back to the public health officer. The enforcement arm of this stewardship plan would be taken care of by our environmental management department of the county, who also does your restaurant inspections and hospital inspections and such.
Did I understand you? So it's the manufacturer of the pharmaceuticals and the sharps that would be bearing the cost?
That is correct.
So the manufacturers could be a certain way sharps, not, these aren't local, these are, you know, companies and pharmaceuticals are international companies. I mean, how would there be an enforcement of that if they chose not to comply?
The way the ordinances work, and this is actually tested in Alameda County. Alameda County introduced an ordinance for pharmaceutical take-back program sponsored by the manufacturers. That ordinance was introduced and subsequently challenged by the pharmaceutical industry. It was taken to the 9th District Court and on appeal when the local Superior Court weighed in the favor of Alameda County. And then when the pharmaceutical industry did not win at the 9th District Court and went to the to the Federal Supreme Court, where it was chosen not to be heard. That was that decision was made here in July. It hit the headlines. And so, as a result, that ordinance now stands and is enforceable by Alameda County. It requires producers, anybody that sells a product, a over-the-counter prescription product. I believe it's actually just prescription, it may not be over-the-counter. There's been a multitude of ordinances that have been introduced since. But for Alameda County, if it's a prescription product, the manufacturers have to create a stewardship plan and program. However they do that, whether they work with all the pharmacies, with a few of the pharmacies, they must produce that program in order to sell in Alameda County.
The manufacturers, to be able to have their products sold in Alameda County, have to have developed a program.
That's correct. Now,
And the county of Alameda enforces that by telling the retailers they can't sell those products?
no, there's civil penalties involved where they can go after the manufacturers. If you try to sell a product within Alameda County can go after you for civil penalties if you do not participate in the program. San Francisco passed an ordinance as well, right after Alameda County. And then also now we have San Mateo and Santa Clara County all passing the same ordinances for pharmaceuticals. King County, Washington was the second. They actually came after Alameda County and were also subsequently sued by the pharmaceutical industry. Now, Sacramento County is one of the first to introduce a sharps component to this as well. But right now, County of LA is also introducing an ordinance, or working on introducing an ordinance for sharps and pharma take-back program sponsored by the manufacturers.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you, sir. Andrew Klotz. I hope so.
Good evening, City Council. Thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Andrew Klotz, and I represent the Galt Youth Commission. A couple months ago in March, I presented you on behalf of this. Let me back up. A couple months ago, I presented to you about the dangers of improperly disposed needles. During that presentation, I suggested that we introduce a mandatory take-back program because the Galt Youth Commission felt that that was the most efficient way for the hazardous waste that was being disposed improperly be disposed properly. And we suggested that you mirror or instate ordinances, not instate, adopt ordinances that were similar to that of the City of Sacramento, the County of San Luis Obispo, and the County of Tulare. And we still think that that would be the best option for you. Ultimately, the decision lies in your hands, but the Galt Youth Commission feels that this is the best option for the City of Galt. Thank you once again for letting me speak, and I'll pass on the mic to whoever.
Thank you, Andrew.
They won't support you. You got proof. It helps me out there a little bit. We want
Yeah, but what do
the
you-
pictures are in here very clearly.
What do you ever do with those pictures, Al? You're always taking pictures, do you have a, I've never seen pictures.
You don't want to know.
Do you put them on,
I have them.
online, or, yeah?
They're $20 a set.
Yeah, right.
If you want to see them, you just ask, and I usually email them to the department.
Oh, okay.
They go charge for
All right, our last speaker sheet on this matter is John Gordon.
Union City Council, John Gordon, Galt mentor with the Galt Youth Commission. I just want to follow up with the county proposal. I was just made aware of this evening, which I think has some promise. But as Andrew was saying, we're hoping he would consider adopting something tonight, look at doing something immediate, as maybe Cal Waste can attest. There is, there continues to be a problem with disposal of needles. The county still has to run through their processes in terms of getting feedback, in terms of getting the votes, and the implementation of their program may not be for anywhere from 6 months to 18 months. What we would suggest is maybe adding a provision within an ordinance to do something now, a provision that would inform that if the county did adopt something, that there would be that flexibility that we would, that the city would work within the county. Having something adopted now will begin the behavior change in the behavior to where they need to safely dispose the needles, because I think what the county would be proposing would probably be something similar in terms of it would probably go back to the pharmacy. So we kindly hope that, you would consider an option to adopt something now, maybe with a provision that would inform if or should the county pass something. As you may well know, the state has been trying to pass legislation to do a take-back program for sharps, and it has been hotly contested, and they can't get anything done because of the lobbying with the pharmaceutical company. So we're hopeful in your decision-making you'll consider doing something immediately.
Thank you, sir. All right, questions or comments by council?
Ann, I have a question. So it says that currently City of Galt contracts with City of Sacramento, City of Elk Grove, hazardous waste, to accept household hazardous waste, which includes sharps, correct?
Correct, that is correct.
Okay. When it says each contract charges the City of Galt $70 per vehicle, which is paid from the city solid waste fund, does that mean if somebody went to return a sharps container, they would charge the city $70?
That is a correct statement. We have a contract with both the City of Elk Grove and the City of Sacramento. So typically, I've been to both facilities. People will bring sharps. They can bring up to 125 pounds of paint, sharps, cleaning stuff. to either one of these facilities. Yes, they can just bring sharps, and yes, it does cost $70 per vehicle. So I did talk to them and said, well, if somebody were to bring sharps back to you, how many containers can they bring? So it was explained to me that there would be some scrutiny if somebody showed up with 10 sharps containers, simply because that gives them cause for concern as to where these needles are actually coming from. But a typical household, if they were bringing back 3 or 4, they would not be concerned too much, but they would question where they come from, and they do take the addresses of all the individuals that make drop-offs of any type of hazardous waste.
Is there any place within the city of Galt where people can pick up sharp containers?
Actually, there is not without paying for it. I did some calling around in Sacramento because other pharmacies do take these back, and none of them provide those sharps containers. They do require the customer to purchase the sharps containers, and those that do take it back, they physically have to hand the filled sharps container over the counter to the clerk. And then I asked them if they had a service that picks them up. Those pharmacies do not. They UPS them out. I did happen to call some medical groups here in Galt because they do have needles and disposal, and they do pay for a service, but the pharmacies do not. Most of them package those needles up and they UPS them back out because that seems to be a more cost-effective procedure for them, as opposed to hiring a service that comes in and picks up. But there is not in Galt. They have to either go to Elk Grove or the city of Sac. And to pick
So that's
up...
probably why they end up in our waste disposal system, because it's not a convenient option for our citizens to be able to return. I mean, that's my concern comes down to, is people who are insulin dependent and using needles on a daily basis. That this appears to be such a, that there's no convenient way for them to dispose of those needles in a safe manner that they don't get into our...
I don't know if this is appropriate for me to say here. If I'm stepping out of line, I'm sure Stephen will let me know tomorrow. I'm insulin dependent, and I do take mine to Elk Grove and Sacramento. And my father now lives here. He's 85, and we can actually take his to, they don't allow it here in Galt, but he can actually take his to where his doctor is. They will take it. I'm not saying that all healthcare organizations do that, but I did explain to my dad that I would be taking his now with mine. And I think people of most ages are pretty, they try to be responsible. They're just uninformed.
It's an education issue.
It is an education issue. And we do try to educate. I notice it's in the Galt paper, it's in the Galt Connect. A lot of your elderly people probably don't have computers, but it is also, you can see it, you know, on Cal Waste, and you just click on the sites. They're very easily accessible to figure out where to take them. It is a bit of a drive, but most customers go to Elk Grove. Maybe not so much Sacramento and off of Fruit Ridge Road, but I know the area, so that's what. So I know.
Well, my father's been in the flank, and my father was insulin dependent. We always struggle with the needle issue.
Fair enough.
Because you know.
And I do understand. I see it at my dad's, and I have to take care of it. So
yeah. So I guess I have some concerns that we don't have some an easily accessible way for people to get sharps containers within our community. I know you can just put them in a bleach bottle and all that sort of thing, but I do think sharps containers at least, even if somebody inadvertently, and I hope through lack of education, would have put that within our in the garbage disposal, that red of the sharps disposal would show right up to help protect the employees of Cal Waste. I guess
I understand
I'm
what you're
concerned that, City of Galt Grove provides them at their city hall and that we don't have
But that, they provide that at their city hall because they also provide it at their disposal site. Their disposal site is only open Sunday through Wednesday. So
if our customers went to their disposal site,
they
could
drop
pick up-
off, they can get a free one. That is exactly correct, up to 3 at any one visit. But say you go to Elk Grove on Thursday and you forgot that it was, closed, you could then go to City Hall to pick up a new one. Now, I wasn't able to connect with them to see how they're funding that, but before this meeting, but I certainly can further investigate.
I actually would hazard to educate guests that that's part of the $70 a carload that we pay is, it all goes into that household hazardous waste funding stream for their enterprise fund. And so it'd be part of the fee that we're paying. And, well, what if they just drop off one little container? That's $70. Well, yes, but they can also bring a whole trunk load of things, and that's still only $70. So it's an average.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion from council? Any direction?
Al,
Al, got a comment?
Alden again. Haven't heard anybody really come up here and ask what to do with their needles. Other than what the explanation is of the others who are here. I ran into some challenges about a month or two ago, and I had to use 5 needles. And I didn't know what to do with them. You sure don't throw them in the garbage because we heard a report on garbage. What happens if a guy pricks his hand and their finger? It's cost a fortune. So we belong to Kaiser, and I asked Kaiser, well, what do they do with them? You give them to us, you ordered them, but now what do I do with them after? And so they says, well, at the Kaiser Centers, they have disposables where you can take them. We suggest you put them in a plastic bottle with a lid that's tight on it and drop them in. And I'm thinking, wow. Now, I understand we want to get something in Galt. Don't get me wrong, because it would be a lot more convenient to do it. But I did that. I put it in a milk carton. I cleaned it out. You didn't have to, I guess, but put it in a milk carton, put the lid on it, went into Kaiser, and it's right there at the front door when you walk in. It's like a big, huge mailbox, and when you pull it, it's about that big and about that deep. So it'll take a pretty large milk carton. And it was easy to just do that. If we could have something like that here in Galt, some way to have a pickup or whatever, or if they have to take them in, where you just recommended they take them into wherever in town here, the requirement would have to be that they have to be in a plastic container with a tight lid on it. That would be my suggestion right now. I mean, there's probably better ones or special containers, but you don't need it. They just drop them in there, and some use quite a few needles. I mean, some of the elderly use a lot of needles sometimes for things they have to do. So this is one suggestion, that 15 minutes away, maybe 20 if you have to, drop them in the container, tighten the lid, do not put your name or nothing on it, just go there and open it up like mailing a package. It's that simple, at least for me it was. I don't have to use needles anymore, but I did run into that, and it was something that I wondered what I would do with it. So if that helps at all in any way, you got it.
Thank you, Al.
That was good.
Yes, sir.
Jack Fiore, I'm the Vice President with California Waste. And just to add a little bit of comments as it relates to, I guess, the origin of this, which the exposure our crews have to this every day. 20 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, when I was listening to Doug, who I've known for a long time in the county's program, I thought, you know, that's a good solution. It's a little more comprehensive because we're not only talking sharps, but we're talking pharmaceuticals. But I think to Mr. Gordon's point, I think a lot of water is going to go under the bridge before that happens, and I'm up here tonight to encourage you to adopt the ordinance, the mandatory take-back approach. I think that just like the city of Sacramento will have to do, or the city of Galt may have to massage this ordinance in a year or two or three when the county's finally comes along, and that'll be the time to do that. But that would be our encouragement.
Thank you, sir. Any further discussion from council members?
I would just say that we've heard that there are options, that people can go places to dispose of their needles. Unfortunately, not everybody is going to be that conscientious. Some people are just going to take the easy way out, and other people are going to have to suffer the consequences. So I think one of the things that we have a responsibility for is dealing with those who will not be responsible. And I also feel like if we, I don't mean to be disrespectful, if we wait for the county to go through its whole process and litigation, that a lot of things can happen in the meantime. So I would be supportive of asking our city attorney to prepare an ordinance for us to review to address this situation.
Which option?
Is that option 3?
Option
the one
3, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be the mandatory take back?
I guess my concern is that there are a lot of options. That obviously, Mr. Valencourt, you know, Kaiser patients can take theirs, return theirs to Kaiser. That we have a contract with the city of Elk Grove and the city of Sacramento to take back. We're talking about people who are, so we introduced an ordinance requiring our pharmacies to do take back. The people that are not handling their needles responsibly, probably very good chance they still aren't going to handle their needles responsibly. Because if they haven't taken the time to find out where to return those needles and what to do with those needles, I'm not sure us passing an ordinance that's putting the burden on these businesses to do it is going to make compliance any better. I do think it's an education issue that we need to, I actually, there's part of me that really liked, it'd be great if we just had a place where that people could just drop it in, and it was a way, and there was a way that we could then utilize our contract to dispose of those items, to do some sort of a local thing without having to pass ordinances that puts the burden on these pharmacies. So I'm kind of torn. I mean, I understand the needle issue. I deal with it on a daily basis. I understand the issue about sharps. But at the same time, it's no cost to the consumers, but we know that these pharmacies will pass on the cost to the consumer. If people aren't disposing of their needles properly now, I don't know if making the pharmacies be responsible will make people be responsible. So I have concerns about passing an ordinance and putting the burden on these businesses when we haven't tried other options, like really educating people.
Well, if I understand correctly, as far as the mandatory take back, it also included outreach, which would include the education side, correct?
Well, why can't we just start off with education?
You know, we can say education, and education is great. However, in the meantime, we're talking about a business that has to cover the cost if their employees get stuck by a needle. So, you know, they incur a cost because of the people that are not being responsible. And I'm thinking that if we as a city don't point this out, that this is something that people need to be responsible for, I'm not sure that everybody that has a hypodermic needle realizes what happens to it after they throw it in the garbage. You know, I just think that we have to take the lead in pointing out this is not something that's acceptable. I don't think everybody knows that. And everybody has the opportunity to get to Kaiser to dispose of their needles, just like we're encouraging people to recycle. I think it's something that...
Do the pharmacies do any sort of education regarding disposal of needles? I mean, before we require businesses to start a program taking back needles, have we explored the option of pharmacies? I mean, if people buy needles from the pharmacy, they're provided needles from the pharmacy, that the pharmacy have some sort of handout that says proper disposal of your needles and how they can do that. I mean, there are lots of things that education involves, and educating consumers beyond passing an ordinance that puts the burden on these pharmacies. And I absolutely understand the health. I just am a little, I'm a little hesitant to put that on what basically are, in our community, fairly you know, small pharmacies. Even if they are in big companies, they are small pharmacies.
And did you see any?
So I didn't know if it was okay for me.
Since you've been actually investigating, and we're just guessing.
I've also gone in and talked to some of the local ones and a few in Sacramento, just because I happen to be in the area. Most of them, in fact, all of them sell the Sharps container when you get your needles. And in there is a label for them to mail it back. What I have observed, and mostly because my father is 85 and he's around other elderly people, they're probably more the ones who are resentful of having to buy this Sharps container and then having to fill it up and mail it somewhere. I just believe it's their age. But most of the pharmacies that I talked to said, well, we want them to utilize this. This is how we feel it should be done. We want them to purchase the container and then turn it in. Now, where Mr. Al said he can do it to Kaiser, where my dad goes to see his doctor, they also provide him with free empties, Sharp empties, and he can turn them in there as well. But I think it's because they're a bigger organization. I know I checked here in Galt, none of them will do that. None of the medical groups here in Galt will do that. I think they're just too small, and it's too costly for them because they're going to pay for the service pickup. They have the service pickup, the medical groups here in Galt, and you have to pay for that by the weight. So if they're allowing all of their patients that get prescriptions from them to return it, then they're going to be paying more, and they just said they don't participate in that.
Well, and these pharmacies would have to do that also.
Right. And you know, the ordinances that I have been reading just for the pharmacy take back, Doug probably could attest to that. There's an item in all of them I noticed where they can increase the charge of whatever they're paying for to offset the cost of how they dispose or pay for the service to dispose of them. But I will say better than 90% that I spoke to, and I spoke to big chains. I didn't, go to the mom and pops. Their sentiment was, buy the box, the Sharps container, use the label, mail it back. So I agree that you need to educate people. And I believe that we do attempt to do that. And I agree with Jack's concern for his staff. But I more think that the people who are disposing of Sharps are probably not the elderly and those that go to doctors and pay for their prescription. There's probably some out there, but most people that I spoke to, they're very, even the elderly, very cognizant that this is dangerous. We can't put it in the trash. They're pretty. They want to do the right thing.
I agree. And, adding the cost of, with a lot of these seniors are on fixed incomes, and adding the cost of,
that is correct.
Then they're going to be paying more for going in and getting.
Now that my dad was here in Galt, I hate to use him, but he's my only example. He lives in a community where there are retirees on fixed income and that is a real concern for them when I sit and chit chat with them.
Yeah, if we make it mandatory for the pharmacies, it's just going to come back to those people who cost.
But if they have to buy the container
that's even more
and mail it in, that's inconvenient, and that's costly for those same people. So
I think there's another cost here that nobody's taking into consideration. If they are being improperly disposed of into the waste management system, and we had a report, it was about 3 months ago, I think you guys reported it. Well, all it takes is one needle, and you've shut down the entire waste management facility for at least 3 to 4 hours, correct, Jack? But you've shut down operations, and that's money out of their pockets as well. So we have to decide which is more important here, the safety hazard to the people working the line and the cost to them, or the cost of the individuals who should be responsible using it. And you're right. The individuals using it are usually doing it the correct way. And I'll be straight up honest, it's the illicit drug users and people like that who decide they're going to use it and toss it. Well, if we have something in place where they can put it, they might use it.
You are right. I agree.
It's better a might than a not.
It would be council's decision.
But requiring these businesses to do that doesn't mean that that's where they're going to take it. I mean, to write an ordinance requiring businesses to take back needles that they might or might not have sold, because illicit drug users usually aren't buying their needles legally. I absolutely think it's a problem for Cal Waste, but it still puts a burden on these businesses also. You can come back up.
Okay, so what I've heard is the problem with people paying, or the consumer paying too much because the pharmacies raise their price, or the pharmacies getting hurt. Is that what I see the major concern is? Because that's the most vocal concern.
I think one of the other concerns is who's really going to follow this. We know that there are a group that no matter what you hand them or what, they're not going to, they're not going to go with the wishes of whatever.
Okay. So we know that some people might not follow it, and yes, that's true. There are people that are always going to follow the law. There are some people that are going to follow the law when it's convenient, and there are some people that are just not going to care at all. So why don't we try and cater to the people that will follow this law when it's convenient, and that way we can, let's say 50% of the people take it back all the time, 40% take it back when it's convenient, 10% never do it. That's 90% of the people, if we make it convenient, that will take the needle to pack lawfully, safely. That's what I
So do you think less than 90% are taking them back now? I mean, we really,
They're getting the waste management facility shut down 10, at least 10 times a week, so that's multiple times a day. Yes, I think so.
Well put, Mr. Klotz, thank you. Mr. Gordon?
I just want to follow up and want you to think about this proposed cost increase. Rite Aid in Sacramento is probably not charging any more for medicine than they are here in Galt. So you talk about how there could be an offset in cost, and I would urge Public Works or the city or the council to do some research to see, well, how much more does it cost for whether it's a bottle of soda, candy, whether it's medications up at Sacramento, who already has this in place, versus here in Galt, to understand the cost impact. And I'd also want to talk about access, because not everybody has access to drive up to Kaiser or even have the knowledge to drive. And I wouldn't think that the city would put out a newsletter that says, go to Kaiser and dump your needles here. So I hope that's also a consideration. We have low-income folks here that do walk to the grocery stores, to the pharmacies, to access and get their goods. And we need to think about that as well. The education piece, very, very important. I hope you also consider those in terms of what your decision going to be tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Jack, can I ask you a question? Yes. Do you really think that making a mandatory take back will make a difference?
Yeah, I do. And I think Mr. Klotz and Gordon just hit it right on the head. I think that when you go to the drugstore to pick up that box full of syringes and hypodermic needles, as they hand you that, they say, and this is the Sharps container, when you come back to get your next refill, bring this full and we'll take care of it for you. Could not make it any more convenient. I'm sure, and I can only imagine, because I don't have to, I'm not a diabetic, I don't have to use needles and syringes on a daily basis, but it's got to be a tremendous burden. This would make it easier. And I think, I don't know if the math is good or not, I'm not sure if it's 90% or 65%.
Well, I know, but
you know, I think if you do make it convenient, I think more people would tend to use it. I've driven to the facility in Elk Grove, and if my wife were here, she'd tell you I speed, and it's still a long ways when you drive fast. And, it is anything but convenient to drive up there.
So do you think, Jack, that it's responsible people throwing the needles into the waste disposal system?
I think that there are, I would speculate that there are a percentage of them, but no, by and large, I think it's a little bit out of ignorance. It's a little bit of, you mentioned earlier, taking the bleach bottle and putting them in there. And I'll tell you what, if I see a bleach bottle or my guys see a bleach bottle, they're going to grab it and throw it in the recycling can. That's where the bleach bottle belongs, along full syringes. And so things get introduced deliberately, I'm sure, but they probably get introduced accidentally as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Becker-Risley, did you have a comment, or?
Yes, Dave Becker-Risley with Cal Waste. Just, very briefly, for me, this sort of just hits really at home. When you ask, will it make a difference? You know what? When you talk to the lady in the MRF that got stuck yesterday and now has to go through a year of treatment and monitoring, and if she's of childbearing age, she's not able to, with confidence, be intimate with her partner.
Horrible.
It's a horrible, horrible thing. And I've seen it happen. It happened to my nephew. Okay? He was working for me last summer. I had to call his mom and tell his mom, hey, he got stuck and he's got to go through. It's a traumatic experience when you, as a person, as the average Joe working at the recycling center or at the landfill or wherever it might be, that this irresponsibility
is negligence. And, you know, at some point, you know, we have to stand up and take a position. And I think that it will make a difference. What Doug is proposing and the group that he leads, it's going to happen. It's going to be, at some point, the legislature has to deal with this. And we've been to the hearings, we've made testimony there, and it's us against really big pharmaceutical businesses. And that's a hard fight. But I think you have to take a step in your community, and at some point, you have to take a position. And waiting for someone else to do it, waiting for the state legislature to do it, we're going to wait a while. But I think as these communities come on board, if the statement gets made more often and more exposure to the problem, I think it does make a difference. I think that, you know, for that person that gets stuck, and, you know, I've got several of them that have got stuck, it makes a difference. So, you know, I know it's a difficult place to be when you're adding costs to businesses, when you're trying to bring business down. But, you know, there's still that human element that I would just ask that you make consideration. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Koval.
Considering the outlays of the hour, I'll be really brief here. We've been talking about costs. It keeps coming up. What are the costs? Actually, I've done that research in advance of our ordinance, and also as my role as the vice chair of CPSC. And there's two different components. You have the upfront cost. Now, that typical, what I'll call a rated container. A rated container is a safe container. That's the one where you stuff it in that container, you seal it up, you can mail it, you can put it even can survive Jack and Dave's truck compacting it. It probably won't break when it gets on their line. It's identifiable because it's marked biohazards, and people can see that. So they understand what that is. Now, those rated containers cost for a 1 quart container, you can buy them online for about $3.50 to $5 a piece. Pretty pricey, maybe fit 50 to 100 needles in there. Now, there is a manufacturer who is the second largest in the nation, and he controls maybe 5% of the market. The first controls almost the majority of the rest of it, with some very small vendors. That first one does not sell a safe container with their product. That's BD. Now, Ultimate, who is that 5% market share guy, has a safe container. It's part of his product packaging. So when you take a needle out of the bottom of the packaging, this tray falls down as you pull needles out, and you pop them in the top, and you rotate it in. That product, that container, costs him less than $1 to produce. So you ask yourself, why would the needle industry not want to go there? Actually, that company, Ultimate, has offered their patent to the largest company, and they refused. Free, and it's $1. So now, you can venture to guess who makes the safe containers and sells them for a pretty high price. Now, on the back end, the other part of this cost, for my facility, when I receive a rated container, it costs me about 40 to 50 cents per pound to properly transport and dispose of that material. If I get something in a milk jug, and I understand milk jugs are convenient, they're a lot better than plastic bags. Some of my staff see needles coming in, you'd be amazed what they come in. And when they come in, those milk jugs, those old Clorox containers, they're not safe. In Jack's line, they're going to blow up. They're going to be all over his line. They're going to shut him down. That cost me almost $9 a pound. Significantly different to get rid of those over that safe container. So part of the ordinance, which I failed to make note of it earlier, was we will require that we're going to attempt to require certainly, that the manufacturers provide a safe container at the time of sale. Now, this will drive consumer choices too. If you are looking at two products, Ultimate's product and BD's product on the shelf, and one of them is going to have that safe container already in it, controlled, or you're going to pay more for this other Sharps that doesn't have a safe container, and you're going to pay more for that container, which one are you going to choose? So this will help to get the needle industry, and primarily one big one, to come in line and start providing a good, safe container at a very reasonable cost to their consumers.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Do I have any further discussion from council on this? That was made in the form of motion, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. I have a motion by Vice Mayor Payne for option 3. Do I have a second to that?
Second.
A second by Councilmember Powers. Call for the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Payne?
Aye.
Councilmember Hewer?
Aye.
Councilmember Powers?
Aye.
Mayor Cruz?
Aye. Okay. We have our direction on this unanimous vote. Moving on. City Clerk's report.
I just have a couple things. Tomorrow night, city council meeting has been canceled due to National Night Out.
All right.
That's all I'm saying tonight.
Staff, we'll start over here. Inez? Nothing? I'm gonna go home, right? Tony? Mr. Winkler?
One quick item, fresh off the press, we have the July water usage report in, and citizens of Galt continue to hold up their end of the deal and get 38% for the month of July, and that exceeds our target of 32% mandated by the state. That's the third month in a row, exceeded by a considerable margin of mandates. So we look forward to keeping up the good work through the summer.
So, based on what I remember, we're ahead of the game, correct?
Yes, the state started tracking in June, so we're now 2 months ahead of the game, which we can bank for months where maybe don't.
Awesome. Mr. Forrest? Nothing? Mr. Behrman? Mr. Rudolph?
No, sir.
Nothing. All right. Comments by council. We'll start down here with Councilmember Powers.
I have nothing.
Okay. Councilmember Hewer?
Nothing.
Vice Mayor Payne?
The garden is continuing to deliver tomatoes and squash to South County Services and the seniors without charge.
Okay, then I'm gonna have it all. Yeah, we want to thank you for that. I mean, it's a great thing to be bringing down to us, and it goes very fast every day, and it's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Awesome work. Okay, as was mentioned, tomorrow is National Night Out, and if you're in the south area, it's at 5:30 when this begins, am I correct? Or 6? 6, okay. 6 o'clock, it'll be starting. We'll have one group in the south area at Meadowview Park. The second one will be in the central area over at the Galt Library, and the third one will be over in the northeast at Community Park. So if you have a chance, come on out, have fun, meet your neighbors. Council will be out at all 3 events. It's going to be very busy. With that, we'll adjourn this meeting.